And you know, we see this inside our own country on the left. And this is something that really bothers me. I never thought I would see this again, the level of censorship and shutting down of free speech. You know, we have been living in a golden time of free speech. The Supreme Court, whatever you think of which justices did which, have been really, really strong on free speech. For the last, I don't know, let's call it 20, 25 years, you could say just about anything you wanted, just about anywhere you wanted. You know, some of it was unfortunate, the cursing and the, grotesqueness. And I was watching a comedian on Facebook, I can't even remember his name, but on Netflix, I mean, I was watching a comedian just in the middle of it. I thought, this is grotesque. This is not funny. And it's just like grotesquely and anatomical, but he's free to do it in ways that he wasn't before. That is being repealed, not by the government, not by the courts, but by big business. Corporations are beginning to shut down on free speech. You know, we can't have Knowles on today. Usually on Monday, we have Knowles on as our cultural correspondent. We can't have him on today because we're, as you see, we're broadcasting from Bin Laden's cave, and we don't even have internet in here, so I can't live broadcast the beheadings. We were going to have, we were going to kill Shapiro, but what's the point if we can't broadcast live? But we can't have Knowles on. But we will talk about Knowles for a minute because Knowles was banned from Twitter over the weekend for making a joke. He made this joke they've been making it on both sides. Everybody's making the joke. The joke is, oh, Democrats or whoever the opposition is, if you're a Democrat, it's Republicans, don't forget to vote on November 7th. So in other words, you're going to show up late and you won't get the vote. Ha, 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 ha. So it's a joke. Obvious joke. Everybody's saying it. A lot of people saying they banned Knowles for saying it, I guess, on the idea that it's fake news. They banned him, I think, for 3 days. But let's face it, the point here is to shut down conservative speech. I mean, obviously, if any of us would ban Knowles' speech if we could, just because it's Knowles, but they don't. Twitter is not acting in that way. They don't know it's Knowles. They are banning. They're banning Michael Knowles, but they're not banning Louis Farrakhan. You know, Trump is reinstituting some of the Iran sanctions that were taken away during Obama's ridiculous Iran deal. So Louis Farrakhan is over in Iran, and according to, I don't know how to pronounce this, Al Jamaina, a Jewish community newspaper based in the U.S., they reported on Farrakhan's visit as the Nation of Islam leader. He led a chant of death to America in Iran this weekend and death to Israel. And we know that he said that Jews are termites. They haven't banned Louis Farrakhan, but Knowles is the danger. Knowles is the danger. And remember, you know, Breitbart had got an exclusive look at this internal Google briefing. It was called the good censor. This is really dangerous stuff. I mean, this is really dangerous stuff. What this means is that Democrats are the party of large corporations that want to silence individuals who speak up in dissent. All right, so this is a slightly old story, but I just want to bring it up in light of Knowles, our own Michael Knowles, getting banned from Twitter for making a joke. The Breitbart got this Google briefing called the Good Censor, in which it acknowledged that major tech platforms were initially promised free speech to consumers. And they said this free speech ideal was instilled in the DNA of the Silicon Valley startups that now control the majority of our online conversations, right? So they had the ideal. Why? Because they were Americans. But then they lost the ideal. Why? Because they got power. When you get power, suddenly it seems like free speech, not as good an idea as it was when you didn't have power, when you needed free speech to rise. So they say there is two incompatible positions: the unmediated marketplace of ideas, free speech, versus well-ordered spaces for safety and civility. Well, well-ordered spaces for safety and civility are not the American way. America is a loud, raucous, revolutionary country where we shout at each other and we yell at each other and then we make decisions. That is America. That is free speech. But now suddenly they are saying in Google, in this amazing memo, it's just an amazing thing. They said that's the product of the American tradition, which prioritizes free speech for democracy, not civility. But there's the European tradition, which favors dignity over liberty and civility over freedom. Of course, you can have more dignity and more civility with less freedom. Of course you can. But who decides? Who decides the speech? And their answer is Us, because we're big, we're powerful, we're strong, we have corporations. We're corporations. We should decide, right? That is the Democrat Party now. The Democrat Party is the party of powerful corporations and powerful universities that silence the speech of individuals, right? The American way is from the bottom up, right? And you know, the funny thing, the thing that gets me about this is all these people who say, look how happy Europe is. Europe is happy and they have social spending and they have civility. What the hell are they talking about? Europe is a moribund continent, a moribund culture that is living in our pocket. They can't defend themselves. We defend them. Their health care, as I talked about last week, we pay for their health care. We pay for their medications, and they still don't have as many medications because they don't have a free system. They have this system, this horrible, unwieldy system that we basically pay for by paying for our medications at 180%. 180% of what they pay for their medications, so we can have R&D, so we can have research and development. Everything they are exists because we keep them alive. And even with that, they're going under. They are going under. They're falling apart. You know, that is not, we do not want it. It's like saying to a young man, you know, you should emulate those old people over there. See how they're dying, but they're at peace. They don't fight anymore. You know, young men are full of energy. They're full of, you know, ideas. They fight. They're, you know, angry. They have a lot of, spirit. And it's like saying to them, yeah, you should act like those old men. They're more peaceful. They have more dignity. Well, no, this is a country that is alive, that is free. It doesn't need corporations telling us who to silence. And listen, we'll silence Michael Knowles. We're going to take him out in the parking lot and just kick him around. We do that every couple of days. It's just for fun, really. But if it also silences him, that's fine. But for Twitter, this major corporation, that's all it is. It is not like some woke, happy place. It's just a big, big corporation that's there to allow everybody to speak, just like the phone company. That's the deal on which they operate. They should not be censoring Michael Knowles. Again, we've talked about this before. The Daily Wire God King, Jeremy Boring, made this point. It is not just the free market. It's not just a free company that can do anything it wants. It runs under the rules of a platform like the phone company. If the phone company started silencing Knowles or anybody else because they didn't like his opinions or they didn't like the way he talked or they determined that his joke was fake news, we would have something to say about it. That's the way that Twitter and Facebook and Google should be treated as well. And you can listen to these people with their arrogance. You can listen to them reveling in their censorship. Brian Stelter on CNN talking about the way that they treated Trump. CNN refused to run his ad in which that showed that murderer who had come back in and out of the country. They refused. They knew it was powerful, so they refused to run it, calling it racism, right? NBC said they would run it, and then they said no. They got some flack, so they said they're not going to run it. Nobody wants to give Trump and the Republicans this ad. But listen to Brian Stelter bragging about this.
We're seeing bluntness on the part of reporters, saying the word lie, or this week saying the word racist. I mean, we're not going to actually play that ad, the racist ad that was posted by the Trump campaign, but we'll show some of the video just to remind you what we're talking about. Frankly, I think CNN probably showed this too much this week. But it is notable that when the campaign tried to buy airtime from CNN to buy this ad, CNN said no, said this is a racist ad. It's not going to be sold. We're not going to sell you the airtime. Describing it as racist, David, that was significant.
That was significant. See, now we're being blunt. We're being blunt. No, they're not. They're being biased. It's them saying it's racist, and they set the rules of what racism is. It is not blunt. It is dishonest. It is not blunt. It is censorship. It's all censorship. Once they set the rules are, we remember, dog whistles, right? The dog whistles. Dog whistles are anything a conservative says that a liberal can twist to make it sound racist. That is what a dog whistle is. And so Brian Stelter is bragging, as they always brag, oh, the civility, we brought civility. No, they haven't. They're just major corporations, big money corporations, silencing individual dissent. Big corporations always love big government. They always complain because of the regulations. They, oh, the red tape. But who can deal with the red tape, right? Who has the armies of lawyers? Who can afford the armies of lawyers to deal with the red tape? Big corporations. Who can't afford it? Small businesses. That's why small businesses have started voting Republican. That's why small businessmen say, yeah, I like this kind of Donald Trump because he's cutting the regulations away so I can compete. Every time a new social media company comes out, Twitter or Google or Facebook, they take it over, they destroy it. Of course they do. That's the way big corporations work. They crush the little guy. It is only when freedom reigns, it's only when everybody can say what they want to say and do what they want to do, that the little guy can rise. And that's true of individuals, it's true of companies as well. All you're seeing, this strutting around, oh, we're against racism, all you're seeing is moneyed interests protecting themselves. That's all it is. That's all it is. Silence and lies. And this is the other thing. They protect the lie. You know, this Brett Kavanaugh, people are saying now that maybe this Brett Kavanaugh thing, which was a boon, I think, for Republicans and closed the gap between Republicans and Democrats. They're saying it may have happened too early. It may have peaked too soon. That's why a lot of people were saying, oh, this bomber who sent bombs around all the Democrats, maybe this was a false flag operation, an October surprise engineered by the Democrats. Well, if it was, there's certainly no evidence of it. I have no evidence of it. But it certainly did work in this way to kind of mute the horror people felt about the way Brett Kavanaugh was treated, right? And now, I don't know if you heard about this, but the Republicans, Chairman Chuck Grassley has referred yet another woman, this is the second woman, to the Justice Department for lying about Brett Kavanaugh. This is a woman named Judy Monroe Layton, and he has referred her case. Remember, there was the other one that he referred, I guess it was Julie Swetnick, right? That was the Michael Avenatti one with the people lining up and the spiked punch, and it all turned out to be ridiculous. He referred that to the Justice Department. This is a woman who said that Kavanaugh had sexually assaulted and raped her in his car. And in a letter to the FBI and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Grassley says that under questioning from judiciary staff, Miss Monroe Layton conceded she made the false accusations because she just wanted to get attention and she was angry and sent it out. So this comes after this. Now, this is horrible stuff in so many ways, and it really affected women. I think it really affected even some of the suburban housewives who were said to be Trump's worst enemies, when they started to think, hey, that could be my son, that could be my husband, that could be my brother. Feminists have wanted to sell this routine that men are oppressing women. But in fact, men and women have been getting along together since time began, or there wouldn't be any men and women. That's the proof that we know that men and women get along at some level, because there are men and women. There would not be any men and women, and men and women weren't getting along. And we love each other. Most of us love each other. Most of us, the central relationship in our life is a relationship with someone of the opposite sex who matters a tremendous amount to us. And we look at them and we think they're crazy. I'm sure my wife thinks some of the stuff I say is hard-boiled and too mean and all this stuff. And I look at her and think, oh, she's too emotional. But we love each other. And that is how we expand our minds. And we become this yin-yang system where we see the world in 3 dimensions. That's the real world. That's the real world. The real world is not men trying to stomp on women and women suffering every day, everywhere, all the time. That is not the real world. The real world is that most people have relationships in their lives with the opposite sex of love and care and concern. And so when you have these people who lie, and you have people in the street saying, believe all women, the stupidest slogan ever invented, maybe. When you have them doing that, it's a threat to everybody. But it's also another kind of threat. The other kind of threat it is a threat to women who have been abused. We know women get abused. We know there are men who abuse women. Everything in our society stands against this. Everything in the hearts of good men. I mean, what's the most common fantasy outside of sexual fantasies? Putting that away, outside of sexual fantasies, I would bet cash money any time that the most common fantasy that men have is rescuing women from danger. That is the most common fantasy. We want women to like us. We want to be brave for them. We want to rescue them. We want to stand up for them and protect them. That is what is in men's hearts all the time. So we don't want women to be abused, but how are we going to tell the difference between a woman who comes forward and says, hey, I was attacked, and a woman who comes forward and says, hey, I was attacked, no, I'm lying, right? If the woman who's telling the truth is surrounded by liars, how do we pick her out? If we're going to believe all women, how do we know to believe the woman who's actually telling the truth? It is a disaster. What they did to Kavanaugh was a disaster, but it does illustrate this principle that they're not standing for women any more than they're standing for black people or gay people or any of the other identity groups that they've created and that they've created in order to turn us against each other. They're not standing for them. They're standing for leftism. How do you know? Because when it's a leftist who's doing the violating, they don't stand up at all. Wonderful piece of tape by Jake Tapper. Sometimes I kick Jake Tapper around, but I think Tapper is at least trying to be a good journalist. I sometimes watch Chris Wallace on Fox, and he's mean to everybody. He beats up on everybody, and sometimes I don't like the way he asks questions because he doesn't let people finish what they're trying to say. But I understand that people can stonewall by just talking, and they can filibuster. But he goes after everybody equally, and so when he goes after people I like, I tolerate it because I know he goes after people I don't like as well. When Tapper is fair, he's very good. Here he is asking Tom Perez, the chairman of the DNC, about the fact that Keith Ellison, who is number 2, has been accused of abusing his girlfriend, and these accusations, which have come with corroboration, have been largely ignored.
What do you say to women in the Democratic Party who say, why is this guy still the vice chair of the DNC?
What I say is that we should always take those complaints seriously, and we do. And that's why an investigation was conducted. That's why Congressman Ellison asked for a health ethics investigation. And Democrats have never hesitated to take action, unlike Republicans. And you know what? Part of why we are going to do so well on Tuesday.
Democrats have never hesitated to take action? Do you mean like in the last year, or do you mean like historically? Because historically, I could go through a list of people.
Well, and again, you saw what happened in Senator Franken's situation. Democrats didn't hesitate to do something, even if it was difficult, because that was the right thing to do.
Okay, so you mean just like in the last year? You're not talking about Ted Kennedy or President Bill Clinton or, I mean, I only have a couple minutes left.
I only have a couple minutes left. I can't talk about all the people you protected over the years. It really is true. There wouldn't be a Me Too movement if Hillary Clinton had won, because they'd still be covering up for Bill. The press would still be covering up for Bill. Harvey Weinstein would still be making terrific movies. He would still be making good movies and chasing women around the room and raping and attacking them if Hillary Clinton had won, because the press, Brian Stelter and all the rest of them, would still be covering up for Bill because they would not want their person to get attacked. They are the only reason this Me Too movement started. Is another one of their famous submarines that they aimed at the Republicans but turned around and blew up their own ship. The only reason it started is because they thought they could get to Trump, because Trump made that remark about grabbing women, and they thought, oh boy, and he's obviously a billionaire playboy. He's done all the things with all the girls. They thought, oh boy, we can get him now, and it blew up in their face. But that's how you know that they are not defending. They're not defending civility. They're defending leftism. They're not defending gays. Leftism. They're not defending women. Leftism. They're not defending blacks. It's all about the leftism, and leftism is all about getting power to build the world as you think it should be instead of as the people think it should be, and silencing those individual voices that America was built to protect. It is hard for me to say this, that America was built to protect the individual voice, even of a Michael Knowles, but even of a Michael Knowles, it was built to protect his voice. And that means you got to let a lot of people speak you don't like, that I don't like, that everybody doesn't like. The people who are really bad people have to be allowed to speak, because who decides? Who decides? It's always, is it going to be the individual guy on the street who gets to decide? No, it's always going to be, if somebody is silenced, he's always going to be silenced by the powerful. Always, always. So even if you silence a Nazi who none of us likes, even if you silence, the bad guys, it's always going to be the powerful silencing the weak, right? The weak can't silence the powerful. It's always going to be big corporations like Twitter and Google and Facebook who silence the little guy. And that's why you don't do it. So